and I'm an Associate Director at PGPMAX Program Office at the Indian School of Business. I welcome you all to this latest edition of PGPMAX Masterclass. Now, before we start, I just want to share the structure of this session so that you're aware what's going to happen, what time and all that, and it will be easy for you to follow this session. So for the first 5 minutes, I will be talking in brief about the PGPMAX program. And then after that, I'll be introducing Professor AJ, and then he will be talking for first 45 to 50 minutes, giving his insights on this topic, and then we'll open it up for the Q&A. We have this Q&A box enabled for you. If you have any questions during the session, you can type those questions. And after the session gets over, I will be picking those questions and asking Professor those questions, and he can answer those questions. So yeah, feel free typing those questions in the Q&A box, and we'll be taking at the end of the last section of this session. I hope you're fine with this structure. All right, before we start, I just want to give a brief overview of the PGPMAX program. PGPMAX program, we call it, it's for the senior executive people, people having work experience of about 10 years. They typically take up this program. It's a part-time or modular program, which means that you come to campus for 1 week after every 5 to 6 weeks. And it's a 15-month duration program. And over the course of 15 months, 12 weeks, you would be coming on campus, either in Hyderabad or in Mohali, or we also have 2 international immersions in Wharton Business School and 1 in Asia. So that's what 12 weeks will be spread over these campuses. And we expect people to be on campus when this modules are run during those 15 months. So over the course of 15 months, we have 24 courses, and each course, basically 12 modules. So each module, we have 2 courses. So over 12 modules, 24 courses. And other than courses, we also have international modules, international immersions, where you get to visit 1 week at the Wharton Business School in the USA. And there's another week in Asia. That is not yet decided, but most likely in Singapore, in one of the top business schools in Singapore. So that's 2 weeks of international immersion as a part of this program. The focus, the core themes of this program is more on strategy and leadership. So it aims at developing your strategic thinking skills. It aims at developing your leadership thinking skills. So that's a brief core themes of this program. Now, I will not be talking in detail about this program. I just want to say that the application is open for the August 2021 intake, which is for the next year. Next year, the session which will start in the month of August, that session, that application is open. The round 1 application deadline for this intake is November 22nd, and the round 2 is March 21st, 2021. Now, if you want to know more about this program, I encourage you highly to attend our info session, which is happening next Saturday on September 12th. Same at 5 p.m. If you want to register, I would encourage you to go to our website. On the website, there's an admission events section on the PGPMAX website. Go there and register yourself. You will get a link, and through that link, you can attend this info session. And in that session, we can have Q&As. Whatever questions you have regarding this program, we will be encouraging you to ask those questions, and we'll be there to answer those questions. That's happening next week, next weekend. Any one of you interested to know more about this program, I highly recommend you to join that info session. All right, so the session for today, the topic is hiring purple unicorns in the new normal. Now, Jim Collins, who is the author of the book, Good to Great, he said that if I were to start a company, the single most important thing that I would focus is to hire the best candidate or best people for my organization. Because the biggest constraint on the organization, or biggest constraint of becoming a successful organization, is its ability to hire the best possible candidate for that firm. But in today's world, we keep hearing war for talent, but it is ever increasing becoming difficult to hire the best talent for the organization. Why is it so difficult? I mean, why do companies find it difficult to hire the best talent? How do organizations globally adjust their hiring strategies to enable competitive advantage? And where do forward-looking employers look beyond the traditional talent pool? I mean, in this world, we know that market is very competitive, and industries such as finance, technology, and media and broadcasting, that in-demand skill sets are ever changing, and candidates are more aware of their choices. They're more aware of the selection that they make. So this gives a lot of questions on how do we go about hiring the best talent for organizations. So we have the answers to all these questions in this session. We have a professor. He is born and brought up in the USA. He earned his PhD from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and his research interest examines firms' hiring strategies. What are they? How do those firms' hiring strategies enable competitive advantage for those organizations? And when do these firms' resources give better performance for these organizations? In this session, he will be giving an overview of the firm's hiring strategies and where to look for the talent for your organizations. I'm proud to present, and you will be happy to hear, our Assistant Professor of Strategy at Indian School of Business, Professor Amit Jain Choradia. He is fondly known as Professor AJ. Over to Professor AJ.
Great, thank you, Narottam. And just to add, I mean, I thought that was a very nice summary you gave of hiring strategies. I don't think I have all the answers, but we'll try to get some insight into what we know about these hiring strategies during a recession. So let me start by sharing my slide deck.
I will stop sharing and then you can take it.
Sure. Okay, is it visible?
Yes, we can see that.
Okay, so let's get started. So hiring purple unicorns in the new normal. And what we mean by purple unicorns is those exceptionally talented workers that are otherwise sometimes not available, but may be available in a recessionary time. So we illustrate that by saying purple unicorns. Now, a unicorn itself is a different terminology that describes a firm that has over $1 billion of market cap. And so typically in India, we have about 26 plus of those. We're the third largest, followed by, of course, US and China are 1 and 2. So what we're not talking about unicorns themselves, although we will give some insight into that. We're going to talk about hiring these exceptional workers. And just to give a little bit of background, I cannot share these slides. These slides are essentially proprietary, but any insights you want, you can take a click, it's fine. And if a question comes to your mind, do bring it up in the Q&A session. So if you want to write that question down, then Narottam will guide us in that process. But if something comes to mind during the session or lecture, feel free to write it down in the Q&A session and we'll get to it towards the end. So, I mean, Jack Welch always says, in order to play the game, you need to have the best players. That's not necessarily true. And I'll give you some examples. Sometimes star players, when they move to a new organization, their performance may not necessarily be the same. Oftentimes it decreases. And we try to understand, why is that? Well, it seems like they may be a best player within that team, but when you move them around, then they may not have access to the same resources, same knowledge. And so because of these two reasons, typically their performance drops. Even if you supplement it within the organization, or if they bring it themselves, it still doesn't work. What's more important is if the best player fits into your new organization, rather than seeking to increase your performance from the best player as a standalone. So that's just something I want to mention up front. What we do notice is that greatest competitive performance changes occur during a recession. What I mean by this is, for example, every year if your rank is, let's say, 20 in terms of revenue, profits, etc., and every year it stays about 20. What happens during a recession, and I would consider that the current time with post-COVID is essentially a recessionary time. It's going to be there, we're going to be in this stump for a while. and it's affecting business. So for all intended purposes, I'm referring this to a recessionary stage. We notice that during this time, top performing firms may drop significantly and lower performing firms may rise significantly. So the variance that occurs is greatest during this recessionary time. One of the factors we've seen is, hiring and top talent is one of the sources of it. So hiring and retaining of top talent is one of the sources we see. And if you look at the tight times that are happening for many companies, and this was a study done by Deloitte just a couple months ago, and they're looking at what were the actions of the CEOs who took responses during the pandemic. And what we notice is majority were, of course, freezing hiring or deferred new hiring, right? That's, of course, the classic strategy. And we're going to get to a little bit of the background on this. But if you noticed, there's actually a sizable portion that have increased their workforce. And so this is what we're going to explain and try to understand in this session. There's other elements you could see. There's reduced pay, furloughed employees, particularly in manufacturing, laid off workers. Now these, again, laid off workers may be hired back in if things are getting better, but some of these furloughed workers may transfer into laid off workers because of the extension of this pandemic. Reduced employee pay, now those of course are aligned. Reduced employee benefits, these are all definitely crucial because these are necessary for you to even have employment. And the replacement of staff with contractors. Why do you have this? Well, the reason we have this is because rather than employ a full-time worker for the entire year, it might be more beneficial to just hire them for a particular gig. And the staff worker in some cases becomes a contractor, and now that contractor is taken on projects, but is not bound with one firm and can go boundaryless across firms. So these are the trends we've seen. And we're gonna, again, explain the increase in workforce. So I wanted to share a quote from an executive fellow at Harvard Business School, also a senior advisor at a global search firm, who has studied recessions historically. And what he noticed is that companies are downsizing, some sectors are collapsing. There is a chance to hire talented people at a time when the pool of talent is expanding, and visionary leaders can make the most of it, preparing the company for recovery and growth. Now, so the classic reason to hire at this time is in preparation for recovery and growth. Now, what he suggests about the pool of available talent is expanding. We're going to try to understand what this means, because this does not necessarily mean workers that are laid off or don't have jobs. So we'll get into that. So we know that there's talent available to hire, but how do you do that? So this SHRM study that just came out a few days ago, I wanted to just go through it quickly because I thought it was relevant to this session. They suggest to target distressed sectors. So you set up a task force to source potential candidates from a hard-hit sector, airlines, retail, etc. And so and then he also suggests, the article suggests, to identify transferable skills and leverage your networks to try to get them. Aim for exceptional talent you may have missed earlier. So for example, a few years ago, you may have missed this talent and now they're available. So this is, again, hiring the purple unicorns, not this one. This is sometimes a very challenging strategy. In fact, I would say you may not even have to set up a task force, because these folks are going to be available and you're going to get, 10 times more applicants for a job because they're already in distressed sectors. So you may not have to set up a task force to source it. You need to set up a task force to filter through and figure out how to get these potential candidates. Promote flexible work and resource in-source talent. This is this is actually the foundation for remote work. And so this is already something that organizations would be doing. And employer branding and build a pipeline. This is, again, another challenge, because at this time, many companies want to take advantage of the fact that there's a recession and let go of workers because everyone else is doing it. So the negative connotation associated with firing is sort of not as crucial during this time. When you're branding for new employees and build a pipeline, this is, again, for the future, in which case you want to target them now. But these are the 5 recommendations. They seem a bit quite general, not so insightful. And of course, these are probably things you know already. So we're going to try to get more in depth into what is it that we can move beyond this information. And again, the focus would be on this aiming for exceptional people. One other point they mentioned in this article is that since you're acquiring professionals in your organization may not be looking to fill any vacancies. You can tell, you can redeploy them to master storytelling about your organization, the history, and that of course can help build your brand. So what are opportunities and challenges? And we're gonna go through some quotes that we're gonna analyze from leaders in acquisition. There's more talent available than there's ever been. Sure. And by availability, it means that talent that is willing to move across organizations or who are willing to try to move to new companies. Millions of people will be without jobs and millions of jobs without people. So this is the classic mismatch between people and jobs. Talent teams can be decisive to invest in these high performers who are looking for work, sometimes for the first time in years. Now, what I'm suggesting is not necessarily to look for people who are in the unemployment market, because there is a selection issue. We're going to get into that. But the chance for someone who otherwise would never have moved from their company is greatest now to hire them, because they're finally going to reconsider, okay, I'm not happy, now where do I go? So to get over that hurdle of willing to move is higher here. And that's where the availability of talent comes from. Another strategy, of course, lay off 50% of your workforce and ask remaining employees to take a pay cut. This is, of course, classic. Organizations are doing it just to survive. But what can we do beyond this? Prospective candidates are listening more, even if they weren't ready to move. So, if you go after the big shots, who you've never had an opportunity to talk, the company may be better positioned to have a subsequent upswing when things get better, because you now have a relationship with these candidates. So you start talking to them now, and hopefully, to recruit a big player, it takes time. So hopefully in the coming months, they foresee that they're willing to overcome that mobility constraint. There's a study done about 10 years ago on the recession and the last 3 recessions. And this was done by Harvard Business School. And the title of it was Roaring Out of the Recession. I thought this was important to highlight this. They identified 4 types of companies: the prevention focused, which are more on defensive strategies; promotion focused, where they go on the offense; pragmatic ones do a combination of defense and offense; and the progressive ones, which are seeking an optimal combination of defense and offense. And it looks like the one most commonly deployed were the progressive ones. And these are the companies that had that increase in variance and change in performance. So if we look at this figure, these are the progressive companies. So if you look at them, again, this is their performance higher than compared to any of the others. Average performance is, of course, here. Prevention focus, their performance sort of dropped. If you're promotion oriented, you're about the same. Pragmatic, a little bit better, but those who are progressive had the highest performance change. And this is the motivation. And if you look at what they did not necessarily simply reduce their employees. So this is something that they did not pursue. They're focused more on operational efficiency, market development, and asset investment. So all these 3 fed into those that are performing well. Now, of course, you could say this might be sector specific, but it's very likely in this day and age for any organization to enter any sector and then again grow. So we're going to focus on progressive hiring as our strategy, which is the ability to flourish in these recovery periods following a downturn. Selective downsizing can be an opportunity to unmake hiring mistakes. So when you're downsizing at this time, it's fantastic to get rid of talent that you made a mistake on, and you won't be penalized for it as you would be in other times. But you want to avoid just survival and freeze hiring. You want to at some point move on and figure out, okay, what's next? What can I do rather than just ride this out? Now here are some insights. Now, where are the jobs going? These don't seem that exciting, but it seems there's an emphasis on COVID crisis counselor. This is again from the same SHRM study. Personal shopper, because you don't want to go all yourself, so you can actually have someone do it for you. Warehouse worker, because of Amazon. Medical products, of course. COVID contact tracer, again, these are all health related, so a lot of health related ones, which is why probably Kodak decided to invest in healthcare and got a large loan for it, although that is partially retracted, so there's still work on their part. But that is, again, a progressive company. Loan specialist, life coach, virtual assistant, occupancy plan, online tutor. Now we're going to, of course, this is all in US, and we're going to see that there may be more opportunities in India. So within India, the fact that, workers can work remotely from rural areas at incomes that are lower compared to other global countries is an advantage. And so how can you enable remote work where the person is working from his home in a rural area, but providing services to a major company in the US? That's a project that I'm currently working on with the Andhra Pradesh government and trying to identify those jobs and those opportunities. So we're going to step back. So that's, again, just to motivate this session, I brought in that SHRM study. For now, we're going to take a step back and just understand what is strategy, what is talent management, and then go into the recent findings before we have our discussion. So what is strategy? Strategy is we can define strategy as a deliberately emergent process. So it is actually the objective of the organization, and it's a combination of your resources that you have and your ability to get new ones, right? So this is the key, and the resources in hand would be your existing talent and human capital. If you get new ones, that's, again, a human capital resource. It's shaped by the culture. So what has your organization done in the past? Successes, failures, what it believe it can be, what if it wants to be. This is, again, the shaping, right? So this is known as your path dependency. You're dependent on your path. And it comes on with a hands management strategy where you want to guide and learn from your daily striving. So these are the three factors that, of course, impact your strategy and what your organization's objective is, which right now would be in question. Unless you're in a thriving sector, your organization's strategy should be in question, should be challenged to be able to prepare and be more progressive. So here's just a quick overview of the strategy process. So you have a deliberate strategy of what you want to do, and then something emergent, which happens in the interaction of your resources that you otherwise would have not anticipated for. And those combine to create new products and processes that turn out to be our actual strategy. So right now, of course, this is what is in question, your organizational values. This is what you should be doing. This should also be happening right now. So all these are going to be in question. And your ability to come here, this is where the hiring strategy happens at this stage, because you want to say, okay, what resources do I have? If I don't have them, where can I get them to get the new products and processes? And it's actually an iterative process between deliberate and emergent. So this is where, when you make strategy in a turbulent environment, you're going back and forth. You're like, okay, we're going to do this, then this emerges, it comes and becomes deliberate, and etc. So now let's take a look at the basic idea of the business cycle. And we know that a firm strategy typically follows a business cycle. So if your business is growing in expansion, you hire workers. If it's not, you don't hire or you reduce your workers. And just basically the supply and demand is what this is going on. Now, what happens is not necessarily profit is declined at this time. And that is because, rather sometimes it remains high, because if, let's say, your goods and services are not being sold, but you're letting go enough costs, you actually may still remain profitable depending on your sector and depending on how hard it is. So we have seen that costs are cut, but profit may not necessarily be the same way. And I want to compare and contrast, since India as a country, we typically source a lot of our work from the US. And you notice that in the US, when there was a recession in 2008, 2009, this was the impact on the GDP. And it actually affected us for, about in 2010, it was pretty strong, and we're pretty stagnant here. Whereas India grew significantly in 2010 and 2011. And even after the recession, it was just a small hit. So India was able to survive and have a stronger growth, whereas the US was pretty stagnant. This again suggests that there will be opportunities for work that would otherwise be cut in the US because talent is more expensive, and outsourced to countries like India, where you can get high quality talent at a more affordable price. And so this is illustrating a particular industry. So one professional service industry and how their hiring revenues changed over the course. So if you look at revenue, which is on the left side, seemed pretty strong. But what was happening is their hiring strategies got cut. So hiring, which is on this axis, dipped and illustrated by the bar graph. Their hiring went down significantly, and they didn't hire many workers even until 2011. So their hiring was cut. So their hiring was typically following a business cycle, but the revenue, which is illustrated by this, I can even do it in red, is illustrating that it's still quite profitable. So that's where, again, hiring follows a business cycle. Now, who was hired? So among those that are hired, even though it went down, most of the hiring was done with rookies. And what I mean by rookies is you weren't hiring exceptional talent at this time, at least at the lower level. We'll talk about upper level. Upper level, there was quite a bit of mobility of talent, but lower level exceptional talent was not there, because to get a mid-level worker and pay them more was not possible, whereas you can get a rookie and pay them less. Now, this is again at the lower level stage. When you're going to higher level, there is tremendous mobility. Because at that stage, even when there's mobility at the higher level, those are essentially mobility of firms. Because who comprises the firm? The organization is comprised of, your top workers, your top managers, your CEOs, and so if they're moving, that's essentially the firm moving. So there's a lot of mobility at that level. So, but mid-level was quite stagnant, higher level mobility, and lower level rookie hiring. Now, why would you hire in the first place? The two classic reasons to hire is either you're growing or you're trying to fulfill a vacancy for someone who left. And so during the 2007-2000 recession, Ed Lazier, who's of course a exceptional researcher in personal economics for many years, if you have any sight of looking up Ed Lazier, you can get some new insights from his work. 80% of hiring reduction was associated with reduced vacancies. So not job creation. So during a recessionary time, we noticed these were the ones that were gone. That if someone left or they were fired from a job, those workers were not replaced. Very likely, if you have a team of 10 and you fired half of them, the other 5 picked up the slack on that particular project. But growth-related strategies is where you needed new talent, because you're entering areas you otherwise would not have. And so that's where this was not affecting. This was making you in some ways more efficient by taking out the vacancies, and growth was of course giving you new areas new areas to engage in. So when you're trying to hire, there are 3 things to focus on to get talent right. It's not just about getting the right people, it's also the right skills and into the right jobs. So if you can get these 3, the job, skill, and person, and I would arguably say the person is probably the most important, because if you get the right person, they can learn new skills and actually do new jobs. So that's where, again, talent is focused on, is getting the right person. Then you want to avoid talent on demand. What is talent on demand? Talent on demand is, okay, I lost a worker and I need someone right now. If you need someone right now, you're going to compromise on your hiring strategies. And you may seek someone or get someone who you otherwise wouldn't because you're constrained in time. And that leads to a short-term strategy of being good, but a poor long-term strategy. So you want to avoid talent on demand and have a plan for what your talent needs so you have enough time to get the right person. And again, which option generates the most value? I would suggest it is this one. So the new approach to talent management, and this is based on a McKinsey survey. It's a little old, but this survey was the first one to suggest that there is a war for talent, and it's getting the right people, and it's critical to your performance and success. It's not about anything else but getting the right people. So how do you do it? Well, you have to embrace a talent mindset, not simply of who you inherit, but seeking new pools, which is what we're going to talk about, new talent pools. Craft a winning employee proposition like Customer One. Rebuild your recruiting strategy in which you do go out and acquire the best talent, not just go from your list. Weave development and integration, because this is necessary for everyone. Even for someone new who's exceptional, they may need some knowledge, unless you let them go on their own, about what the organization is about and how to integrate into it. And finally, this is the most crucial one. Differentiate between your A, B, and C players. Now, classically, we would say that your organization is comprised of probably 20% are your A players, about 70% are your B players, and your 10% are your C players. This is how your organization is typically comprised of. And so the exceptional talent are these A players. This is your exceptional talent. The problem is that they also are more mobile. If you're a large institution, you may not seek A talent. You may just want the B players who are going to do their job and stay. Because if you get an exceptional talent and you're at discord with what their strategy is, they may leave and may harm you even more. So the emphasis on getting the right talent is crucial, depending on what your organization needs. So the key question is, can you gain an advantage from hiring purple unicorns in these tough times? So we're going to suggest that there is success, but it's challenging. So there are a couple things you need to be aware of. One is when you hire exceptional talent, there's a challenge of identifying the right talent, right? Because if the worker, the unicorn, purple unicorn, is willing to move from their past employer, why are they willing to move? Are they willing to move because they're going to get laid off? And that information you will not have, only the past employer will have. Because if the past employer wanted to keep that worker, why would they consider letting them go? So that's one information, which is the adverse selection issue. Moral hazard issue is that after they join the organization, they underperform. And now you've had an exceptional talent which is underperforming and they're not exceptional. So you've just had a loss. So these are two classic issues with hiring purple unicorns. The third is their inflated bargaining power. And so this is again a challenge because when they come in, they are going to be demanding things. Now these are things that demand for the success of the organization, but you have limited bargaining power vis-a-vis these workers. So let's take a look how this occurs, how the changes occur in a recession and a non-recession. So if you look at the change, the pie gets bigger. What that means is that you have increased talent at the novice level, the rookie hires. You have more rookies, right? So this is rising, more rookies. You have more exceptional talent. These are the experts, which are the unicorns. Then you also have higher quality uncertainty, which is, okay, who is it that we're getting? I don't know their quality because in a recession, this is exacerbated. But you also have lesser quality uncertainty if you're seeking to hire workers that are currently employed. So those who are in the labor market are highly uncertain because we don't know what their quality is. They may be adverse, they may just be undervalued. Within the organization, we definitely know that, okay, they made the cut. So they definitely must be someone that the organization wants to keep. So because of this, there are two opportunities that emerge. One is there's usually a munificent labor market, right? So when you release these underutilized workers, it cut employment costs, but now you have a safer harbor from the troubled employer. So this is again where you're likely to find these other workers who are employed after the first of the layoffs are the ones who are more likely to be exceptional and more likely to possibly move because of the fact they're not certain about the organization's survival. And of course, because the supply of this talent outstrips the demand, there's increased bargaining power of hiring firms, typically in a recession, because they're going to likely force the wage down for job seekers, even if it's temporary. So firms who are hiring have higher bargaining power, to contrast with the expert hires who also have higher bargaining power. So now you're sort of, having you're at the same platform. So does it improve performance? Well, we find that while labor markets obscure the valuation and also create problems for identification, so there are search costs. And these, of course, are more varied and varied and larger in labor markets. And organizations cannot plan for them. So where you source your talent is typically important. Market signals in hiring may be unreliable, especially in the laid-off market. And turbulence, of course, disrupts the onboarding process. So how can organizations overcome this? Well, if you're able to source from pools that are more discriminate, and we're going to identify 4 of them. Then you can hopefully accurately identify these as high value experts and capitalize on their negotiating power. So you want to focus on, as we say, a buyer's market, which provides you more access, information, and advantage for these experts. So let's see what those are. These are the 4 sources. One is, let's start with this one, your elite competitors. So the competitors that are doing well, who have already gone through a shedding program, are now employing exceptional workers. These workers are likely to be better trained, handle more complex work. They probably have really decent profiles of the hiring firm and the employer. They could have spillovers in reputation and have less information asymmetry. So you get some quality assurance. So seeking to hire exceptional talent at competing firms is your one source. The second source is cooperator firms, or we could say your clients or vendors. So clients or vendors whom you, let's say, contract work to or from, also have talent. And so you may say, okay, you know what? I don't want to contract anymore, but let me get this one crucial worker at that vendor who I can work with. And so this strengthens your ties with potential clients. So if you hire someone from a vendor or a client, it actually strengthens your tie with the client. So we notice that the mobility of, let's say, a general counsel moving to a law firm increases the fact that that client is likely to give more business to that law firm. Why? Because that newly hired formal general counsel likely has more knowledge about the client and what their needs are, and would likely recommend and communicate with the client to seek this law firm. So you see, that's another source of hiring and potential competitive advantage. The third one is, again, this is going into the labor market, but not seeking necessarily laid off workers, but those who are at failed firms. So without any, and to be able to distinguish that the exceptional talent was not part of the reason for that failure. And if you can disentangle that, either by looking at the clients that that exceptional talent worked for, then you might be able to get a bargaining power advantage and acquire exceptional talent at a lower cost, because they are likely to be mobile and they may be exceptional and have nothing to do with the fact that the firm failed. So this is where you actually dip into the laid off worker pool. And fourth is if you're hiring in distressed local economies. So some regions are more affected than others. There are some limited opportunities for these workers. So they might want to jump to a safer ship. And because of their geographic constraints, you might be at an advantage because they have fewer options elsewhere to hire workers in these distressed local economies. So these are the 4 sources we see when hiring exceptional talent can lead to a competitive advantage. And so I have just a few more slides left. So key research-based findings. So vacancy-driven hiring, of course, sheds existing talent, creates vacancies. You're likely to promote from within. And if you cannot, so we see that during recessions, promotions skyrocket. You're shedding talent at higher levels and promoting them with new talent or rookie levels. And then if you can't find them, then you want to hire. But most often these are not filled. So if you want to just fill a vacancy, that's not a reason to go out and get these exceptional workers. The reason to get them is if you want to grow in a new area. So you want to go beyond where you're at. And this is probably the best strategy because it also gives the worker autonomy to go into a new area where you're less likely to be involved in, and give them the autonomy to work. They're less like, and also, but you still have to address issues of compensation, bargaining power, adverse selection. So it's not easy to just simply say, okay, we have an excess pool of talent, let's hire. No, it's not necessarily the case, because if you want to get the best workers, first of all, they would otherwise not be available. And so now if they're available, they're going to move only if the compensation, bargaining power is in their favor. I want to go through one quick study done by one of our own faculty members, Chandrasekhar Sripada. He studied 18 out of the 26 unicorns in India. Unicorns are those, again, firms valued over $1 billion. And so he sampled them, and he found that unicorns do not hire purple unicorns. What does that mean? that these most valued firms do not want to pay for exceptional talent. They rather develop an institution where they don't have to rely on necessarily purple unicorns, but just a system that no matter who fills that job, the system works. So who are the key positions that they look for? Well, data scientists, product managers, business analysts, computer vision, AI experts, coders, programmers, software developers, UI, UX designers, tech architects, and finance HR managers. So notice most of these are dealing with technology, most of these positions. And only a few are client management and HR related. He noticed what were the factors that attracted talent to these organizations. And the number one reason came out to be the culture of the organization. So that's something you want to change to be able to institutionalize your workforce. It would be the culture, followed by their employer brand. These are the two important ones to attract talent. So in summary, rather than unemployed labor market, hire currently employed purple unicorns. That would be my first suggestion. It gives a boost, but workers have more bargaining power. So it gives a boost to your organization, but these workers have more bargaining power. So you have to be very careful in how you negotiate. If it's coming too difficult, you need to drop it. Alternatives to consider are promotion, because these workers are average, and maybe less mobile. But in case you can't promote because you don't have the requisite talent in-house, then you have to go outside. If you can move yourself towards more of an institutional driven hiring strategy, which relies less on the talent itself, but just anyone who is within that position would be able to perform. This is a sign of a most successful firm, who are again followed by top level senior talent. In the case of when to buy purple unicorns, so typically lesser status firms are the ones who are most best candidates to be able to climb the ladder. So let's say if you're not in the top 10, but you want to be in the top 10 of your industry, you want to hire from the top talent. This will give you a quick boost and at the same time let you climb the ranks. Although you need to give them autonomy, complementarities, because otherwise they would be performing poorly. And also, if there are positions that require heavy lifting, then you might want to seek, again, these visible star scientists. If they're visible, let's say they're ranked or they're in the news, then of course, although they're likely to command greater compensation and have higher bargaining power, they are a star. So that's at least your way that while the individual performance may suffer, your organizational performance may increase. And a last point on agility. So recently you've done a lot of work on agility and how organizations quickly adapt to their external environment. And some of the ways that they do so is to rely on their internal talent, so ability to redeploy your existing workers to new areas, seek contracts or other gigs, and we see a shift. We see a rise in contracting because a firm is more likely to hire a contractor for a short-term project and release them, allow them work for other firms, then employ them. Utilize technology to a greater extent, and of course have leadership capability. So technologies, again, in some ways, can this process now be automated is considerations that are going right now. And of course, a leadership mindset that we have to do something, we have to change, not necessarily do the same thing if we're in a hard hit sector. Okay, so this is my last slide. So I just want to highlight, some discussion questions for the next half hour that we have, 45 minutes. Does your organization strategy need purple unicorns? Is your first question I want to ask. What do you guys think? What are the different talent pools you would tap into during these times? So what are the hard hit sectors? What is the profile of a new age talent? And when you do mention this, please do, if you have a chance, put your name, company, maybe something about the organization strategy, any inputs you have. Because when you come into a PGPMAX class, it's really a lot of personal feedback, customized feedback towards you and your organization. So we're going to really pick on you to tell us what is the organizational strategy? What are your thoughts? And really dissect it. So think of it very intense consulting session that you have a chance to also discuss and see what others are doing in your classroom. So it's a very unique environment. And just a last slide I want to share with you. While exceptional talent is crucial, you'll see that over time, your human capital does decrease. So, this is where we want to bring you into a PG program so that this doesn't go down, that this continues to rise or stay, at least try to rise. But we know that your total wealth does increase over time, but your human capital is more time sensitive. So I'm going to leave it at that. And let me start my video and start asking questions. So let's continue sharing the slides, and then let's see if we can ask questions. So there we go. All right, so let's get started. Narottam, did you want to start? Do we have any questions?
Thank you, Professor AJ. I'm just waiting for any participants. If they have any questions related to the topic today, we can take it up right now. I know we have one question from Vikesh, but it is more for the selection criteria of PGPMAX. Vikesh, the selection criteria of PGPMAX is, it's basically the eligibility. You need to have bachelor's degree, and you need to have minimum 10 years of work experience. And these are the two eligibility criteria. And then, of course, you have to submit applications, and after submitting applications, you go through interview. And if you clear that interview, then you get the admission offer. So that's about selection criteria PGPMAX. If you want to know more about PGPMAX program, then I encourage you to attend our next info session that is happening on September 12th, which is next Saturday, same time, 5 p.m. All right, we have this questions from Dr. Ripin, Professor AJ. He's asking that how to prevent poaching of top talents from our own company. Do you have any thoughts on that?
How do you prevent poaching of talents? Right. Yeah. So what first understand is to understand why are they leaving. So in some ways you cannot prevent a top talent worker from leaving. So the question would be first, why are they leaving? Ask them why they're leaving. Is it compensation? If it's compensation, there's, that's where something you have to really work on. If it's they're not happy in the firm, that's something you can work towards preventing. So you want to find out why are they. So do you have any insight, Dr. Ripin? Why are they leaving your organization? And at the same time, let me follow up your question on retention method other than promotion. So retention is not necessarily promotions. In fact, what we see is sometimes when you promote a worker, they're more likely to leave because now they have a new title and they want to leverage that for higher salary, because within promotion salaries are lower than market promotion salaries. So if you promote someone, they might get, let's say, a 5% raise, but in the market for that same title, it might be a 20% boost. So they're actually more likely to be mobile. So promotion retention is not a retention strategy. So let's take if Dr. Ripin can elaborate a little bit more on if he understands why are these people leaving, then we can get into that. So let's see if we can wait for that response. Anybody else?
Yeah, we have another question from Dr. Kunta Balasubramaniam. He asked, how does hiring differ from capital goods industries and software companies?
Yeah, so there's a big contrast, right? When we talk about hiring exceptional talent, it's typically in software and service organizations because the knowledge that they're selling is essentially the talent, right? When you're in a capital goods industry, you're less likely to need such exceptional talent unless you're using that talent to enter new areas. So if you're a capital goods industry, you require just your labor to do their job. So that's where you're seeking more automation, technology, operational efficiency, not necessarily getting the exceptional talent. So there's a big difference between labor and knowledge-based hiring. And in software companies and service organizations, it's knowledge-based hiring because that's the output that is given to clients. Whereas in capital goods and other manufacturing industries, it is labor, which again can be replaced. So these are blue collar versus white collar jobs.
Thank you. We have another question from anonymous attendee. He asked, how do you evaluate whether purple unicorn will fit into your organization's culture?
So first off, if you're hiring a purple unicorn, they're not going to fit in your culture because they want to change your culture. Very likely, if they wanted to fit your culture, they probably, this is exceptional if there's a mobility constraint and they want to move because they like organization, that's fine. But typically the purple unicorn is going to himself know whether this is a fit or not, or he's going to change your culture. It's not going to be you influencing your culture on this one if they don't want it. So again, the purple unicorn has higher bargaining power. Even in a recession, they might join you, but then leave right after. So it's actually ironic. Purple unicorn and culture go opposite. If you're hiring a purple unicorn, you're sort of looking to change your culture.
Thank you. We have this question from Swati was asking. Yeah. She asked, how do you prevent burnout of existing employees in a growth-driven hiring strategy where vacancies are not backfilled?
I'm just going to clear out some of these questions so we can get to these other ones, I think. Okay.
Sure.
Can you repeat that question?
Yeah. How do you prevent burnout of existing employees in a growth-driven hiring strategy where vacancies are not backfilled?
It's a tough time at this point. If you're in a growth-driven hiring strategy, why would employees be, oh, the employees are being burnt out, so you're not having the, okay, so if I understand your question correctly, you've lost talent, you're not replacing them, and everyone's just working harder and you're growing. So this is a challenge, right? Because not only are they, so it's twofold. First is if you had half the talent left and otherwise whatever work was done was shared between these 10 people, now it's only these 5, let's say. And on top of that, you're growing. So this is a double fold. So they're not going to be happy because things are tight. But in some ways, you don't have to necessarily keep them happy because what is their alternative choice? In this time, in this crunch, everyone is suffering. Everyone is, burnt out. Everyone is working hard. It's just a function of the environment. To help out, you could bring in more workers because you're growing. So this is where the organization may be a little bit selfish and opportunistic in that they're leveraging their existing workers in a growth environment. If you are stagnant and you're leveraging the 5, that's fine. But if you're growing, you have to bring in new talent. And you don't have to necessarily bring in exceptional talent. This is more supportive, subordinate talent to help these existing workers. Because the last thing you want is for them, if they're a purple unicorn, to leave your organization because be a competitor in this growth-driven strategy. So that's one thing you want to avoid. So you need to provide them support. The company is not providing resources if it's growing.
Thank you. We have this question from Charan. He asked, can you please give some insight on new age talent recruitment, please?
Oh, this is a question I had for you folks. So my question was, what is the new profile of talent that you're looking for? Who are you looking for? What are the type of workers? What are the qualities? What are leadership skills you're working for? This is my question to you, for me to better understand. I actually don't. I'm an academic who studies hiring practices. So if you can give me insights into who you're hiring these days and why, that could help. Because at this stage, we're still trying to understand who the new age talent is.
Sure. We have this question from Mayank. He writes that COVID-19 has proven that remote working works. It has worked well for IT organizations. It has made many executives in developed countries, especially Europe, US, and Australia, New Zealand, where talent is expensive, and they think more about outsourcing and transitioning roles to India or Philippines, etc., thinking that people are anyways working remotely. What are your thoughts on this? Is this a long-term strategy that would work?
Great question, and yes. So in some ways, India can be the remote work capital of the world because of its ability to house exceptional talent in rural areas where the work can be done remotely. So this is a project we're currently undergoing with the Andhra Pradesh government, where we have, and Jumpstart India is a project at ISB, where we're taking on 10 projects to study the phenomenon of remote work across what are HR practices. So what are the HR? So let me go through those 10. What are HR practices? How are they changed pre, post COVID? Compensation issues are, do you pay workers less because they're working remotely or more? We have issues on work-life balance. How does that change? We're looking at leadership changes in times of remote work, hardware, software, and telecom issues, which can enable remote work. So this is where one of our suggestions is, if you can provide the sufficient foundation infrastructure, like in the US, then you're helping grow for a long-term strategy in these areas. We also look at urban decongestion as a positive outcome, employee well-being, and finally, the impact on women and less privileged workers. And so this study is currently going on. If you look up Jumpstart India, you'll probably find information on this, and we're currently working on this. So as a short answer, yes, this is something that we see happening. Workers are getting laid off in the US, and the talent is being outsourced to India. And so that work is going to grow, and it's just a nature of how how countries develop their competitive advantage.
Thank you. Santosh asks, how do we engage these purple unicorns given the current scenario of onboarding virtually and they don't get to see and meet their fellow colleagues? How do we build trust?
That's a challenge. This is again highlighting the adverse selection issue, where you're bringing in these purple unicorns, but there's onboarding which is virtual, which is difficult because how can you connect with someone virtually? You don't meet your colleagues, so again, there's less socialization, integration, and how do you trust them? So you can't do any of these. So either you have prior information on these purple unicorns. So as a talented worker that you missed out on a few years ago, you're in social relations with them, you've kept in touch with them, then that can address the trust issues. But onboarding virtually is going to be a challenge. One thing you might want to consider is letting these people lead, which is what they want to do, in a new area or the area on their own. So whether it's a new office, a new area of expertise, a new product line, something where they have a bit of autonomy. And although they're less connected with the firm, which is going to happen over time, you can try to do these virtual onboarding, but it's not required because they're not part of the existing line of business, but in a new line of business. If you're bringing someone into your existing line of business, this is a challenge, and it cannot be overcome. So I would say it's going to create more problems than benefits. And so you want to avoid it and try to shift them into an area where there's less of that issue. There's a lot of problems in these strategies. So the suggestions I give you are typically those on average. I'd like to hear a little bit more about your companies and your strategies. What do you see as working? What do you see as not working? That would help bring a more fruitful discussion and something that happens within the classroom. So in the classroom, we want this type of interaction where we really go nitty-gritty into your organization strategy. What are you doing? Why is it being done virtually? Why are you hiring exceptional talent? What are all the reasons for this? Just to dissect it and also get insights. So a little bit more depth would help, but that would be my first thought.
Thank you. Charan asks, does the enhancement of skills and talent in this recession period helps the team to be listed in the group of purple unicorns such that they will benefit while situation turns positive?
I need to think about that one. Does the enhancement of skills and talent in a recession help the teams to be listed in the group of purple unicorns such that they benefited? So let me first mention, you all are, in some ways, you can consider yourself as purple unicorns. You're on this call, you're looking to grow your skills, clearly what Chad is asking, and hopefully you're leading something within your organization. The organization wants you, and you can develop those skills if you need to go into new areas. So if you are all purple unicorns, you're trying to, of course, increase your human capital for long-term benefits. Yes, if you enhance your skills and talent, then yes, when the situation turns positive, then of course you're going to be more employable. You have to seek out those skills and talent or learn that knowledge which is required in those sectors that you foresee growing. So you're going to be seeing a lot more remote work. You're going to see a lot more use of AI and this automated technology. So if you enhance those areas, develop new product lines, new knowledge, then an ability to fulfill your clients' demands. So if you have existing clients, what do they need, and be there for them. Then when things turn positive, you'll be the first ones to be sought after. In fact, we're going to see hiring of pepper unicorns happen anytime from now till the recession, of course, till the end of the recession. Now, when there's a growth spurt and things are growing, then of course, whether you're a purple unicorn or not may not matter as much, and the organization does not care as much because you're growing. So if you're growing, then you just need talent to fulfill it. If you get a good one, that's great. Even if you don't, just the nature of the work is enough for talent to be recruited and the job to get done.
Sure. Thank you very much. Does anyone has any more questions? So far we don't have any questions now.
Yeah, this was a good set of questions that the group has asked. I do want to go back to Dr. Rippins on how to prevent poaching of top talent from your organization. One thing is you can think about, who are these people leaving? Why are they leaving? It's tough to retain the best workers. So would you want to then train your top B worker to move into the A category, but then that person is then less mobile? Are there mobility constraints that you should be aware of for this top talent and hire them accordingly? Mobility constraint is a big issue and a big way to retain talent. It could be family, it could be the nature of the work, whatever reason. So to get insight into why are you hiring talented workers only for them to leave is a big problem. So you want to try to address those.
Thank you. We're still waiting for, if anybody has any more questions, we still have some time, so we can take those questions.
This is a pretty good group that we have here. See if I can elaborate on one other point.
Dr. Rippin has mentioned that basically after a compensation threshold, blackmailing becomes an issue.
Yes, so there's a story I can tell you that relates to this. So there are three things that increase the bargaining power of a worker. One is, let's say, so an existing worker is likely to have increased power if they're working in an area where everyone has to go to them, right? So they're a central node in this network, and they know they're a central node, and people have to go to this person. So this person has, what do you say, bargaining power, equivalent to what you say, blackmailing. You have to find a substitute for this. Either you find another worker who can be trained and learn this area, or you can get it automated, or you disentangle this job into 2 or 3 so that it doesn't give so much one person so much power. So you have to really think about this, because you at this point have no choice but to pay that person more and whatever they demand. But it's a short-term issue. You might pay them now more, but now you're looking for alternatives to find as a substitute for this worker, because that's not a viable strategy. So for a short-term issue, do it. If you can afford to, in long-term issue, find some way to get rid of that situation. Okay, I see this question from Satya Natarajan. Yeah. Does Purple Unicorn apply to hiring CEOs as well? Oh, most definitely. In fact, that's where, if you do hire a CEO, so I want to first say that 80% of CEOs are internally promoted to the position. There's only 20% or less that are actually hired. So when do you hire a CEO? If your company is doing well, no. If you're doing well and you need a successor, you go internal. Your company is doing well. If you're a visible organization, Fortune 500 company, still no. We disproportionately see a lot of news of hiring of CEOs because it makes for good news. I mean, people like the fact that there's been a transition at the upper level. If you say someone's been internally promoted, it's just not as exciting. So for the 20% that are hired, they're hired for a particular reason, and it's typically to change the organization. If you're poorly performing, that's the reason you hire a CEO from outside, or if you don't have the talent inside. If you have the talent inside and you're still going outside, this is going to create more of a conflict. So when you hire a CEO from outside, you're expecting a drastic change in organizational culture, change in the point of view, perspective, everything. So it's crucial to hire the purple unicorns and give them, because with the position already comes autonomy. So if you get the skill set, and they're going to be compensated more, typically, even if they're not within the industry, even more so, then yes, hiring purple unicorns is very applicable here. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you. We have this another question, which mentioned that you said the culture is one of the biggest reason for move. Can you please elaborate what does a purple unicorn looks for while evaluating culture?
So this is where it varies. It's very heterogeneous. Purple unicorns are exceptional talents. So by nature, they're looking for not a stagnant organization that's growing, that's doing things, that takes things seriously. If they have a exquisite skill set, which is typically what purple unicorns bring, they're looking to build on that. So if you give them if you're opening a new area, that's when you bring in these sectors. That's where we see they perform the best. Now, if you're just doing existing stuff the way organization is doing, and you bring in this new one, he may not like it because the culture organization is already set, and this new person's coming in. It might create a clash, and actually the existing workers may not respect this newbie. That new person might want to change things. Existing workers may not like the change. So it just overall creates a clash, which can hurt performance. Now, if you're in a service sector, this may be okay, because in a service sector, there's less interaction with your existing workers because you're all just doing your own work. So if you give them into a new area of your sector, then it should be fine. But typically, unicorns are looking for an environment for them to grow and just execute their strategy, because that's what they want to do. So you just give them the space to do it, pay them for it, because they're going to deliver the outcomes. And if they don't, then let them go soon enough. You don't have to employ them because they're hired for that skill. If you find out very quickly that they don't have it, then you don't wait. You can let them go.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have this question from Santosh. It's a long question, so I'll read it slowly so that everybody can understand. He says that, are we seeing any trends in the industry to share human capital score, which tells the equivalent of, let us say, CIBIL score, which tells a credit history, and people get an opportunity to improve upon? Not talking about a typical performance appraisal by direct managers, but referring to assessments done scientifically.
Human capital score. Interesting. So this is what you would say a Korn Ferry would do for you. Is there a consulting organization that will come up with a metric to give a score and then suggest to you who to hire? Is there one done within an industry? Yes, Korn Ferry has it for each industry. And that's why you would hire a search firm to do this for you. So a search firm would tell you, okay, this is the best talent given the human capital of this individual and the skill set that you're looking for. So that's what the firm, the search firm would do for you. So yes, that's actually part of their business model, part of the services you buy, part of what you pay for, an exorbitant price you pay for to access to this type of information. Yeah. Is it standardized? No, it's varies firm to firm. This is one of their business models.
Thank you. We have this question from Gundapala Subramaniam. He says, can a purple unicorn come from a different industry? Meaning, getting hired into a completely new industry without having prior experience?
Yes. So if an individual, now the question is, why would you do that? First off, if you do that, be sure that you're going to be paying this person more than if you got someone within the industry, not less, more. And the reason not doesn't come from you, the fact that you're trying to fulfill the compensation requirements for the skills of this individual. It's because this individual is bringing in is more risky to hire. When this individual is hired, they know that they may not be able to if let's say things don't work out, they're at a risk because they just left their industry. So to compensate for the risk that this individual is facing, you have to pay them more. Now, they are exceptional because they may have helped a particular industry grow. And if you can find synergies, not necessarily in the industry itself, but in the strategies they're deploying. So if it's a growth strategy that they helped in one industry, then they can bring in a growth strategy to your industry. If it's a cost cutting strategy that they worked in their industry, in the new industry, they can make cost cutting. So what type of general skills are you looking for, or strategic skills you're looking for that this individual employs? And that comes at a premium. So yes, it can happen, very rarely, but it does happen.
Thank you. We have this question with Dr. Ripin again. Any one instance, if you can share, which is related to hiring, which can be a good lesson for everybody here?
Interesting. Let me ponder about that. Let me think about that because I wanted to give an example. So let me think about that. I have one example in mind. Just give me 1 second. Let me see if it's a viable one. Let's see. Give me 1 minute. In the meantime, let's go to the next question while I look this point up.
Sure. We have this another question. It says, do organizations actually work to or invest in building unicorns internally, given that they may attract?
I see. Okay. So do they invest in building unicorns? So you don't want to, so there's a bit of a challenge here because purple unicorns, if you build them, then they may be more mobile. So you want to build the talent, but you want to be able to retain that talent. How do you retain that talent? One way to do that is by making sure that the knowledge that they're gaining is more firm specific versus industry or profession related. If it's industry or profession related and not firm specific, then it's much easier for them to move. That said, you want to build unicorns to the extent that it helps your organization, but not so that it could be, not so that someone else can poach you. That's what I would say about that. But it's very challenging. We have a whole set of rules about investing in workers, and you want to bring in rookies because rookies are cheaper. They cost less to your organization, and if you train and develop them, then while you have an upfront cost, over the next several years, you can probably get them to deliver significantly more value than what they had cost you, because internal wages rise less than external labor market wages. So that's an advantage. The problem is that then they become candidates to be poached. So you want to be able to say that I'm going to take advantage of this rookie for the first few years. After that, if they stay, that's a plus, but I'm not banking on it because I know they may move. If you have a promotion system, you can promote this worker, but not everyone, and signal that, okay, you're keeping the best talent. But again, they still may leave. So a strategy of building requires you to just focus on taking advantage of them in the first, get an advantage from their human capital in the first several years, because that's when they're less mobile. Yeah. So most of the examples I have are when hiring went wrong. So in Wall Street, we know that a star hire, which would again be another purple unicorn, if they moved just across the street to another Wall Street, let's say investment banking firm, their individual performance dropped, their firm performance dropped. And it's just picking stocks, which is what they were doing. So you think it's a very general skill, but there's still some element of firm specific knowledge, which is not mobile. So for the most part, just expect that if you're going to hire someone exceptional and not give them space to go in a new area and walk them work within your organization, you should expect a dip in your first year that may persist longer. To take advantage of purple unicorns, it's crucial that you're growing and you're letting them lead that growth. In any other situation, you're going to lose out. So people say, yeah, we hire purple unicorns. It's a great branding strategy. It probably gives your company recognition, but you can lose out a lot if you don't have a strategy in place. So my question to you would be, what is your strategy? In some cases, this worker, if you think about it, would have probably left. A purple unicorn might be one of the best entrepreneurs within your industry. So since they're a purple unicorn, they might be able to leave and start their own business. And that may be an alternative for them. But the leap from leaving the organization to starting a business is great. So if they can start their own business in your organization, that's beneficial for them because they have less risk, and beneficial to you because you're taking advantage of this entrepreneurial talent, which they themselves are hesitant to. They rather be an employee than an entrepreneur. They'd rather be the best worker than an entrepreneur. If you look at Steve Jobs, when Steve Jobs resigned from Apple in 1985, he started a new company called Next. And then, I mean, that company grew significantly. And one of the, and of course, it was acquired by Apple in 97. And also that company, I mean, you know, you could think of Steve Jobs as a purple unicorn, but he clashed within his organization and he left and he started his own business. He could have been hired, but he decided, look, I want to do my own thing. So if you can get exceptional talent and just think of them as an entrepreneur, not as an employee, you're probably in better shape.
Great, yeah, great insight here. We still have 10, 15 minutes. If anybody else has any questions, we are happy to take. In the meantime, AJ, you want to touch upon any particular slide that you want to, you know, share more details?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there was one I wanted to just go back and visit. So this summary slide, I just want to emphasize a little bit more on this one. So, so again, I think existing research would say that, Sherm, that unemployed is the way to go. And I would push against that. The search costs of getting and filtering out the best unemployed worker is fraught with frictions. So you want to go with the safety net of getting workers who, you know, pass this stage and are actually employed, but were not laid off. That on average is of higher quality. And within that group, if you get purple unicorns, you're probably in best shape. Just be aware that some workers who would otherwise not move are now willing to move, but that doesn't mean you can get them at a discount. It's just that you're able to get them because otherwise they would never move. If it's an expansion stage, you can never get this worker because they have no reason to move. They're happy. But if they're not happy, then they're willing to move and they're going to command a higher wage. But you're okay with giving them the higher compensation or promise of it because you're expecting them to grow your organization in directions in the coming years. So it's more of an investment and it's a co-investment that you need with this worker. But you should see signals of that because these workers have more bargaining power. So if you see that bargaining power, you see that autonomy, then you're in good shape. Promotion is the largest that happens in this time because of the fact that existing workers were laid off at higher levels and internal wages are lower. So you either promote someone and replace them with someone who's cheaper for the same work. So that happens often and it's a strategy you should be deploying. People are less likely to move. So if you do stress them out, as one person said, they're burnt out. They are burnt out, but that's what everyone is doing at this time. And so, you know, it's less likely that, you know, they're going to find an environment where that's not the case, unless they move into a growing sector. And finally, the case for buying these unicorns. If you need them, they're complementary in your organization in terms of maybe a new area that you need them for, but you haven't developed. You give them autonomy and your weaker status. If you're a high status firm, you're not going to get higher. But if you're a weak size foam, this will give you a huge bump. So those are things I want to be aware, and of course agility. Okay, so I just want to emphasize those first few points because I think that's a nice summary of this session.
Sure,
Okay,
thank you.
I'm sharing my slides now. So,
yeah, we have a couple of more questions. We can take it up and then we can wrap it.
sure.
So first is by Nirupam. Question is how to structure or negotiate incentives from both sides, firm and purple unicorn. What are critical factors should one engage consultants or do directly?
No, you need to engage consultants, right? So if you, I mean, you want to be able to, since you don't know, I mean, this is the first time you're hiring these purple unicorns and you don't want to be screwed over. You want to make sure the contracts are clear. So do hire a consultant to do the work for you. Just be aware you have the bargaining power. So you can negotiate on what you're willing or what not willing to do and what you're expecting. So yes, engage in a consultant and know you can get it for less. How do you structure incentives? Well, you have the bargaining power. So, and the purple unicorn does too. So it's a match. But you're trying to understand what value are you getting from this unicorn, purple unicorn. If that can be explicitly mentioned in the contract in some way, that this is the scope of the work that they're going to be doing. This is what we're expecting to happen. That will protect you in some ways from any problems that are there on down the road. So you want to definitely engage consultants, definitely learn what value you're getting, speak to the purple unicorn. What is their growth strategy? What are they going to do in their organization? They're a purple unicorn, so they must have some idea of what they want to do, how they want to do it, and if it aligns with your approach. And that's what you're looking for. So don't do it hastily, don't do it directly. Seek a lot of guidance and support. Take your time because you want to do this properly. It's a very costly endeavor, and you don't want to lose out by making it hastily.
Thank you. Maybe we have this last question and then we will wrap it up. The question is, do strategies such as multi-year stock options help retain talent?
Well, we always struggle with that one. So stock options are helpful to retain talent because just a form of, okay, the more I contribute to the organization, the higher the value will be. At the moment, everyone is struggling, so I don't know how motivating that would be. Also, if they can find a similar work elsewhere and they're willing to get paid more, then stock options is not in a retainer. I mean, everyone is doing this now. Everyone is giving ESOPs. I mean, the perspective of some of these workers who are not planning to stay in the organization for long, it doesn't mean much for them. If you have a worker who has been out, let's say for 10 years, and now is settling in, then that might be a nice motivation, but then they would otherwise stay. So I'm not sure what additional value you get from ESOPs. It just depends on what competing firms are offering and how you are there in your benchmark. So you want to benchmark your compensation to what's happening in the industry. As long as you're benchmarked, then you should be fine.
Great. Thank you very much, Professor AJ. I think that concludes our session because we have no more questions. So yeah, thank you very much for taking your time and giving us your insights on hiring purple unicorns. I'm sure not many of us were able to spend their last 1.5 hours really well, and they were able to get good insights from this session. So thank you once again. And yeah, I look forward to having you sometime in the future. So thank you, Professor AJ.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Mayanaratham.
Thank you.
Bye, folks. Thanks again.
Thank you very much. For other attendees, if you have any more questions, I just share my contact details. You can reach out to me in future. You can, for any question that you have, please feel free reaching out to me on this. I'm just sharing that. Yeah, so that's my contact detail. My colleague Smriti is also in this call. You can reach out to us on this email ID or on this contact number. Anything you have any further questions on this session, or you want to know more about PGPMAX program, feel free reaching out to us, and we'd be happy to discuss whatever questions you have on this topic. So thank you very much. Thank you once again, and I hope you guys are doing well. Thank you.